Welcome to the Forgotten Narrator. There is a reason these two names, Ultramarines and Blood Angels, echo through every corner of the Imperium like the tolling of cathedral bells before a war. They are not just space marines, they are symbols. They are myths in power armor. They are the armored angels that stride through fire and ruin, carrying either the cold resolve of order or the incandescent fury of noble sacrifice. Their banners are not merely sigils of war. They are declarations of what it means to be human, twisted and exalted through 10,000 years of unending strife. But somewhere behind the triumphs and glories, behind the statues and the prayers, lies a question that has haunted fan, warrior, and scholar alike. If the Imperium could only have one of these chapters at its side in its final hour, who would it choose? And why? The kings of Macragge, paragons of law and survival, or the angels of Baal, fallen sons whose rage could ignite the stars? This is not just a battle of might, it is a reckoning between two visions of salvation. The tale of these two legendary chapters begins in fire and divine contradiction. Guilliman and Sanguinius, both Primarchs, hurled through the warp and scattered across the galaxy, could not have landed on more opposite shores. One destined to build a realm of perfect order, the other born to inspire awe with the radiance of martyrdom. From their very first breath, they were reflections of the Emperor's dual ambitions: stability and sacrifice, empire and ascension. Guilliman's arrival on Macragge was a stroke of cold fortune. Raised by a nobleman, he mastered logistics, governance, and the art of war, with the same calculated calm he would later engrave into the Codex Astartes. His sons, the Ultramarines, became the gold standard of the legions Astartes, not simply warriors, but the very foundation of a functioning empire. Every detail of their creation was built to last: gene seed of remarkable purity, doctrine of adaptable rigidity, and a Primarch who saw not just battles, but centuries ahead. Sanguinius, by contrast, descended upon the radiation-blasted sands of Baal, a place of death and mutation, where survival was measured not in plans but in will. From these ashes rose a figure of impossible beauty and grace, winged like a seraph and revered as divine. But his was a path of tragedy from the outset. While Guilliman built civilization, Sanguinius carried the shadow of fate in his heart, the knowledge of his death, the weight of foreseen doom. His sons were molded in that same crucible of sorrow and splendor, shaped by admiration of a father too perfect to live and a curse too dark to deny. Their chapters inherited these foundational truths. The Ultramarines became exemplars of the Codex. Every squad, every campaign, every syllable of doctrine a reflection of Guilliman's genius. They were clean, precise, predictable. A chapter that could win wars before the first bolter fired, by weight of planning alone. They were not merely the strong arm of the Imperium, they were its spine. The Blood Angels, meanwhile, became living relics of a dream that died on the steps of the Emperor's throne. They fought like gods in a fury that transcended reason, every blade swing a psalm to their fallen father. But there was beauty in their rage, artistry in their death. While the Ultramarines embodied order, the Blood Angels lived by passion, fighting not to survive, but to redeem, to atone, to be worthy of the angel they had lost. Yet, even in their beginnings, there was a seed of rivalry, not born of hatred, but of contrast. Guilliman saw flaws in Sanguinius's idealism, perhaps envied the love his brother inspired so effortlessly. Sanguinius, ever noble, never criticized Guilliman's logic, yet likely pitied the burden his brother bore in the form of endless responsibility. And so their sons, consciously or not, have always stood in the orbit of one another. The Ultramarines believe themselves the foundation of the Imperium. The Blood Angels believe they are its soul. This dichotomy has echoed for 10,000 years. In every fortress monastery, every chapter hall, every whispered myth among the adepts of Terra, the legacies of these two giants continue to define the very idea of what it means to be Adeptus Astartes. They were never meant to oppose each other. But in a galaxy that bleeds and screams, comparison is inevitable. The only question that remains is which vision will carry mankind to its final hour: the dream of perfect order, or the song of glorious death? War is not just destruction, it is philosophy, manifested in steel and fire. Nowhere is this more evident than in the distinct doctrines of the Ultramarines and the Blood Angels. They wage war in fundamentally different ways because they believe in fundamentally different truths. For the Ultramarines, war is a science, a vast equation of cause, effect, and predetermined victory. For the Blood Angels, war is an art form, a desperate ballet of death where every stroke is painted in crimson and gold. This is not merely a matter of strategy, it is a battle between discipline and passion. The Ultramarines are disciples of the Codex Astartes, the monumental tome authored by Robert Guilliman himself. It is not just a manual, it is scripture, philosophy, and identity. To the Ultramarines, deviation is weakness. Every maneuver, every contingency, every retreat and counterstrike has a place. They are the generals of the stars, orchestrating battles with surgical clarity. Their formations are textbook perfect, their command structure unshakable. They rely on precise communication, perfect coordination, and a deep reverence for chain of command. In the Ultramarines world, chaos is not just the enemy, it is an aberration of thought. The Blood Angels reject that rigidity not out of arrogance but necessity. Their warcraft is infused with the red fury of their father, Sanguinius. They descend upon the battlefield like avenging spirits, guided less by doctrine and more by instinct. The Death Company exemplifies this, their blood-mad rage not only tolerated but weaponized, allowed to run rampant because their fury cannot be caged. They favor close combat not out of inefficiency, but because in that final, desperate moment where blade meets flesh, they feel closest to their lost angel. Where the Ultramarines seek victory, the Blood Angels seek transcendence. Their formations are looser, their strategies more fluid, but this unpredictability makes them terrifying in war. You cannot calculate the madness of righteous wrath. Yet within these approaches lies their greatest vulnerability. The Ultramarines, in their perfection, can become brittle. The Codex cannot adapt to every horror of the galaxy, and there are foes who thrive in the unpredictable. The Blood Angels, meanwhile, teeter always on the brink of ruin. Their passion makes them mighty, but also makes them fragile, vulnerable to corruption, to the lure of vengeance, to the doom that whispers in their dreams. Still, to watch each of them fight is to witness opposing kinds of poetry. Ultramarines line up in disciplined rows, advancing like a tidal wall that crushes all before it. They win wars by the book, and their book is carved in ceramite and logic. Their presence on the battlefield brings hope, because they are predictable in the best possible way. They do not fail. Blood Angels strike like lightning from the heavens. Their jump packs scream through the void, golden armor reflecting firelight, chainswords roaring with operatic fury. They fight with a desperation that borders on madness, but it is precisely this madness that makes them invincible for moments at a time. To the Blood Angels, war is not merely a means to survive, it is the crucible through which they prove they are still worthy of Sanguinius's legacy. In the grim darkness of the far future, where few things remain pure, these two doctrines are more than battlefield tactics. They are philosophies of survival. One rooted in control, the other in transcendence. One looks to build a future that might endure, the other to preserve the beauty of a dying past. It is in this contrast that their rivalry burns brightest. Not because one is better, but because each exposes the other's wounds. The Ultramarines cannot understand how madness could ever be strength. The Blood Angels cannot bear how sterile and cold victory feels when stripped of soul. Yet the galaxy, indifferent and infinite, tests both, over and over, and still they endure, because they believe. And because belief, in the end, is the most powerful weapon either chapter can wield. Among all the tragedies that haunt the Imperium, none are as personal, as deeply felt, as the silent agony of genetic inheritance. For the Blood Angels, this agony has a name, the Red Thirst, and worse, the Black Rage. It is the flaw that pulses in their veins, a ticking bomb wrapped in sacred memory. For the Ultramarines, the flaw is absence, their gene seed nearly pristine, their weakness more subtle. A dependence on structure so absolute that deviation feels like sacrilege. Each chapter carries its own burden, written in the language of flesh and blood and spirit. The Blood Angel's curse is more than just a physical mutation. It is a spiritual torment. Every one of them, from the lowliest neophyte to Lord Commander Dante himself, feels the pull of the Red Thirst, an insatiable hunger for blood that threatens to drown the mind in a bestial frenzy. It is a reminder that their nobility was bought at a terrible cost. But even this is nothing compared to the Black Rage, a psychic echo of Sanguinius's death that seizes a warrior without warning. In an instant, a brother becomes a vessel of madness, consumed by visions of Horus and the throne room, convinced that he is reliving the Primarchs' final doomed stand. There is no cure. Only death, in glorious combat, can grant release. And yet, they endure. They do not hide the rage, they embrace it. Those afflicted are clad in black and red, marked as death company, and unleashed in battle with only the barest hope of return. The Blood Angels do not shun them, they revere them. They fight alongside these doomed souls, not out of pity, but out of solidarity. This is the cost of being a son of Sanguinius. To be an angel with broken wings, to carry beauty and terror in equal measure. By contrast, the Ultramarines are paragons of genetic purity. Their gene seed has been declared the most stable of all. It is from their line that many successor chapters have been drawn, and their ability to produce consistent, reliable Space Marines is unmatched. But this purity is not without consequence. It fosters an image of perfection that is nearly impossible to live up to. The burden of being the ideal Astartes weighs heavily on them. Any failure, any deviation, is magnified by the expectations they carry. They cannot afford to be anything less than exemplary. Where the Blood Angels are allowed to mourn, rage, and fall into madness, the Ultramarines must always appear composed. They do not have the catharsis of the Death Company. They have no ritual for emotional collapse. If they break quietly, beneath layers of doctrine and silence. Their curse is not madness, but repression. The Codex Astartes becomes both shield and prison. And yet, both chapters find power in their flaws. The Blood Angels turn their thirst into fire, their rage into strength. In battle, it makes them superhuman even among Astartes. It allows them to charge when others would hesitate, to slaughter when others would break. The Ultramarines turn their rigidity into unity. In war zones where chaos reigns, their discipline becomes a sanctuary. Their soldiers do not falter because they do not question. The book tells them what to do, and they do it flawlessly. It is tempting to see one as flawed and the other as perfect, but such thinking misses the truth. The Blood Angels are deeply human beneath their godlike exterior. Their suffering connects them to the people they protect. The Ultramarines are icons of hope, not because they are without sin, but because they strive always to embody an impossible ideal. Each chapter represents a different kind of strength, one forged through anguish, the other through control. In the end, the curse and the code are not opposites, they are mirrors. The Blood Angels bleed because they remember. The Ultramarines endure because they cannot forget what they are meant to be. Both suffer in silence, both rise regardless. And in that rise, they prove that greatness in the Imperium is not about being without flaw. It is about fighting, every day, not to be consumed by it. Throughout the stars, legends of conquest and defiance echo like war drums across time. But among the myriad chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, few have carved their victories into the annals of history with the sheer weight and grandeur of the Ultramarines and the Blood Angels. These are not simply warriors, they are master tacticians, immortal heroes, and avatars of relentless will. And when measured by the impact of their battlefield achievements, each chapter casts a colossal shadow across the Imperium's long night. The Ultramarines, by sheer scope of influence, are unrivaled. From the era of the Great Crusade to the darkest days of the 41st millennium, they have acted as the Imperium's spearhead, bulwark, and standard-bearer. Their dominion, Ultramar, is not merely a realm, it is a fortress empire, a beacon of hope and order that has endured while entire sectors have fallen to ruin. Their ability to not just wage war but sustain civilization through it is a mark of strategic brilliance. They win wars that others would lose, not through desperation, but through cold precision and overwhelming planning. One of their most defining triumphs came during the Plague Wars against Mortarion and the forces of Nurgle. While chaos unleashed rot and ruin across the Ultramar sector, Guilliman's return brought not only hope, but a masterclass in military counter-assault. Through orbital strikes, strategic retreats, and precise counteroffensives, the Ultramarines stymied the advance of a Death Guard incursion that could have drowned an entire quadrant in filth and despair. Guilliman, reborn as Lord Commander of the Imperium, proved that his chapter's might was not a relic of the past, but an evolving, adaptive force still at the heart of mankind's survival. Yet the Blood Angels saga is defined not by empire, but by last stands, doomed charges, and impossible victories. Their legend is born in cataclysm. Time and again, they have held the line not because they were destined to, but because no one else could. Their apotheosis came during the devastation of Baal, when Hive Fleet Leviathan descended upon their homeworld with a force so immense it defied reason. Billions of Tyranids, unstoppable, endless, swarmed toward Baal, and every loyalist chapter within reach was summoned. Even then, it seemed a futile effort. But the Blood Angels stood, unwavering. Dante, weary beyond reckoning, rallied his sons and their successors. Every single warrior knew it was likely their final hour. And yet, they fought with such valor that even the hive mind seemed staggered. The arrival of the Indomitus Crusade and the intervention of the Great Rift twisted the tide. But make no mistake, the Blood Angels bled the swarm dry through sheer fury. Their survival was not granted. It was seized from the jaws of annihilation. Their history is a mosaic of such moments. At Cygnus Prime, they were betrayed and shattered, yet rose again. On countless battlefields, from Armageddon to the defense of Cyberi, they have thrown themselves into the breach where the light faltered. They win not through numbers or doctrine, but through sacrifice and sheer emotional willpower. Their enemies fear them not just for their prowess, but for their unpredictability, the way they surge into battle with the fury of men who do not expect to return. It is tempting to crown the Ultramarines the strategic victors. After all, they command fleets, maintain territory, and enact massive galactic campaigns with precision. But the Blood Angels win wars that cannot be won. Their victories are soaked in blood, yes, but also in moments of glory that remind humanity why it still fights. The Ultramarines protect the Imperium's body. The Blood Angels guard its soul. This contrast is the essence of their greatness. Where the Ultramarines create the conditions for victory, the Blood Angels triumph when those conditions fail. Each is mighty beyond measure, but they wield that might in radically different ways. One crafts the war like a symphony, the other screams into it like a defiant hymn. And as the galaxy burns, both are needed. One to plan, one to feel, one to win with structure, the other with fire. Throughout the stars, legends of conquest and defiance echo like war drums across time. But among the myriad chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, few have carved their victories into the annals of history with the sheer weight and grandeur of the Ultramarines and the Blood Angels. These are not simply warriors. They are master tacticians, immortal heroes, and avatars of relentless will. And when measured by the impact of their battlefield achievements, each chapter casts a colossal shadow across the Imperium's long night. The Ultramarines, by sheer scope of influence, are unrivaled. From the era of the Great Crusade to the darkest days of the 41st millennium, they have acted as the Imperium's spearhead, bulwark, and standard-bearer. Their dominion, Ultramar, is not merely a realm. It is a fortress empire, a beacon of hope and order that has endured while entire sectors have fallen to ruin. Their ability to not just wage war, but sustain civilization through it, is a mark of strategic brilliance. They win wars that others would lose, not through desperation, but through cold precision and overwhelming planning. One of their most defining triumphs came during the Plague Wars against Mortarion and the forces of Nurgle. While chaos unleashed rot and ruin across the Ultramar sector, Guilliman's return brought not only hope, but a masterclass in military counter-assault. Through orbital strikes, strategic retreats, and precise counteroffensives, the Ultramarines stymied the advance of a Death Guard incursion that could have drowned an entire quadrant in filth and despair. Guilliman, reborn as Lord Commander of the Imperium, proved that his chapter's might was not a relic of the past, but an evolving, adaptive force still at the heart of mankind's survival. Yet the Blood Angels saga is defined not by empire, but by last stands, doomed charges, and impossible victories. Their legend is born in cataclysm. Time and again, they have held the line not because they were destined to, but because no one else could. Their apotheosis came during the devastation of Baal, when Hive Fleet Leviathan descended upon their homeworld with a force so immense it defied reason. Billions of Tyranids, unstoppable, endless, swarmed toward Baal, and every loyalist chapter within reach was summoned. Even then, it seemed a futile effort, but the Blood Angels stood, unwavering. Dante, weary beyond reckoning, rallied his sons and their successors. Every single warrior knew it was likely their final hour, and yet, they fought with such valor that even the hive mind seemed staggered. The arrival of the Indemitus Crusade and the intervention of the Great Rift twisted the tide, but make no mistake, the Blood Angels bled the swarm dry through sheer fury. Their survival was not granted, it was seized from the jaws of annihilation. Their history is a mosaic of such moments. At Cygnus Prime, they were betrayed and shattered, yet rose again. On countless battlefields, from Armageddon to the defense of Sabari, they have thrown themselves into the breach where the light faltered. They win not through numbers or doctrine, but through sacrifice and sheer emotional willpower. Their enemies fear them not just for their prowess, but for their unpredictability. The way they surge into battle with the fury of men who do not expect to return. It is tempting to crown the Ultramarines the strategic victors. After all, they command fleets, maintain territory, and enact massive galactic campaigns with precision. But the Blood Angels win wars that cannot be won. Their victories are soaked in blood, yes, but also in moments of glory that remind humanity why it still fights. The Ultramarines protect the Imperium's body. The Blood Angels guard its soul. This contrast is the essence of their greatness. Where the Ultramarines create the conditions for victory, the Blood Angels triumph when those conditions fail. Each is mighty beyond measure, but they wield that might in radically different ways. One crafts the war like a symphony, the other screams into it like a defiant hymn, and as the galaxy burns, both are needed. One to plan, one to feel, one to win with structure, the other with fire. To understand why the Imperium reveres both the Ultramarines and the Blood Angels, one must look beyond their weapons, beyond their victories, and into the stories whispered in cathedrals and screamed in the dying breaths of guardsmen across the galaxy. These chapters are more than military assets, they are myths given form. Living totems, they do not merely fight the enemies of mankind, they embody what the Imperium wishes it could be. One is the Empire's perfect mirror, the other its bleeding heart. The Ultramarines are, in every sense, the model Space Marine. Their imagery is everywhere, on recruitment posters, in inspirational sermons etched into the plasteel walls of hive cities. Their deep blue armor, the laurels, the sigil of the Omega, they project stability in an age of collapse. To the citizenry of the Imperium, the Ultramarines are a promise that somewhere out there, a force of pure logic, discipline, and justice exists. Their very presence brings order. When an Ultramarine speaks, his words are law not because of tyranny, but because of earned trust. They are not beloved because they are warm, they are respected because they endure. Within Ultramar, Guilliman's legacy has created something close to a functional realm in an empire of corpses. There are schools, there is culture. The rule of law exists not as a tool of oppression, but as a framework that protects the innocent. It is a glimpse of what the Imperium could have been, had the galaxy not spiraled into damnation. And because of this, the Ultramarines are seen as hope incarnate, not because they are perfect, but because they fight to preserve a fragment of sanity in a world devoured by madness. The Blood Angels inspire a different kind of devotion. Their beauty, their tragedy, and their fury make them holy in a way that transcends comprehension. They are painted on shrine walls with golden halos and sorrowful eyes. Priests cry their name when healing the sick. Dying soldiers whisper it as a final prayer. To the people of the Imperium, the Blood Angels are not just warriors, they are avenging angels, and they bleed for humanity in a way that makes them feel closer to saints than soldiers. Their father, Sanguinius, was the most beloved of all the Primarchs. His death at the hands of Horus is remembered as the moment innocence was lost, when even angels could fall. But the legacy he left behind, of sacrifice, of beauty torn asunder in the name of salvation, burned itself into the spiritual DNA of the Imperium. The Blood Angels are mourned even as they fight. Their flaw, their agony, their glorious defiance, these make them symbols of what humanity might become if it ever chose to die beautifully, instead of live broken. Where the Ultramarines bring hope of order, the Blood Angels offer the comfort of passion. When a guardsman sees an Ultramarine, he stands straighter, reassured that his sacrifice means something. When he sees a Blood Angel, he weeps, for he is in the presence of something divine. The Ultramarines give people a future. The Blood Angels give them meaning. It is no wonder that the ecclesiarchy often places them side by side in sermons. Guilliman, the Lord of Order, who brought structure and salvation. Sanguinius, the Angel of Light, who gave his life so mankind could keep its soul. In this spiritual architecture, the Ultramarines are the pillars, firm and unshakable. The Blood Angels are the stained glass windows, beautiful and haunted. Neither symbol is more important. Each fulfills a need in the Imperium's shattered psyche. One tells humanity that it can endure. The other tells it that, even in pain, it can be glorious. Together, they are the emotional architecture of survival. And though they may never truly understand one another, their existence side by side is a reminder that strength comes not from unity of thought, but from the harmony of opposing truths. Roboute, Guilliman, and Sanguinius. These names resonate far beyond the ranks of the Astartes. They are not simply Primarchs. They are archetypes, mythic figures who shaped the Imperium not just through war, but through their vision of what humanity could and should become. One lived to see his empire fractured and returned to salvage it. The other died to buy its soul a few more heartbeats. And in comparing them, we uncover not just the measure of two men, but the war within the Imperium's own identity. Guilliman was the architect. He saw the Imperium not as a war machine, but as a civilization. His intellect was monumental, his every word, every campaign, every doctrine, a brick in a grand edifice of order. When he was found on Macragge, he had already constructed a functional empire in miniature. His wars were won not merely by force, but by foresight. Every Ultramarine trained under him was not only a warrior, but a symbol of what humanity could achieve through discipline, reason, and structure. But Guilliman was not cold. His discipline came from care, not contempt. He genuinely believed that only through order could mankind endure. Even now, as the resurrected Lord Commander of the Imperium, he bears a burden no other being can fathom. He has returned to a galaxy utterly corrupted, a world his father never intended. And yet he does not collapse under despair. He adapts, reforms, and pushes forward. Guilliman is a titan of will, carving a path through madness with nothing but belief in logic and duty. Sanguinius, in contrast, was heart incarnate. His beauty was not merely physical, it radiated from his very soul. Where Guilliman inspired respect, Sanguinius inspired love. His sons would have followed him into the Eye of Terror without hesitation. He understood people in a way Guilliman never could, not through command but through empathy. And this empathy, this aching connection to all living things, was his strength and his doom. He foresaw his own death. He knew, long before the final battle aboard the Vengeful Spirit, that he would fall. And he went anyway, not because he was reckless, but because he understood that sacrifice was the price of hope. In the end, he was not slain in a surprise attack. He faced Horus alone, knowing he would not survive because he believed that his death would matter. And it did. The Emperor struck Horus down in part because of the wound Sanguinius opened. But more than that, Sanguinius became the martyr the Imperium needed. His death became a legend that sustained his sons through 10 millennia of torment. These two legacies could not be more different. Guilliman builds because he fears collapse. Sanguinius fought because he embraced mortality. One survives by planning every outcome. The other triumphed by embracing the inevitable. Guilliman's sons carry his doctrine like scripture. Sanguinius's sons carry his death like a flame that cannot be extinguished. And yet, they were not rivals. They loved each other deeply. Sanguinius stood by Guilliman during the most turbulent moments of the Great Crusade. Guilliman, for his part, wept for his fallen brother and never recovered from the loss. There are some who say the Codex Astartes itself was Guilliman's attempt to impose sense on a world that had gone mad after Sanguinius died. As if, in losing the angel, he sought to build a world that could never again suffer such a loss. Their legacies still shape the galaxy. Guilliman walks among the stars once more. The only Primarch returned to lead. His decisions now define the Imperium's course. But Sanguinius lives on too. In the dreams, in the fury, in the sorrow of every blood angel who charges into battle with death in his eyes. One molds the future. The other whispers from the past. Both are essential. If Guilliman is the Imperium's mind, Sanguinius is its soul. And the war between order and feeling, between survival and sacrifice, continues in every battle their sons fight. There is a certain poetry in the fact that neither Guilliman nor Sanguinius leads their sons any longer, and yet their presence lingers in the actions of those who inherited their mantles. Two commanders now carry their burdens, Marnus Calgar and Lord Commander Dante. Each has been shaped not just by their Primarch's ideals, but by a galaxy that has grown colder, crueler, and far more unforgiving. And yet they lead, they endure, they rise, time and again against the dying of the light. Marnus Calgar is the epitome of Ultramarine doctrine. Raised in the Codex Astartes, he is not just a follower of Guilliman's teachings, he is one of their most successful products. Every campaign he has led echoes with the structure and foresight that define his chapter. From the defense of Ultramar to the purging of Aurar's sepulchre, Calgar's strategies are masterpieces of calculated warfare. But what sets him apart is not his adherence to the Codex. It is his ability to bend it when needed. He does not worship Guilliman's words blindly. He understands the intent behind them, and that makes him more than a mere administrator. It makes him a true commander. Calgar fought in the defense of Macragge against the Tyranid Hive Fleet Behemoth, a battle that nearly shattered the chapter. It was a brutal siege, an onslaught without precedent. Calgar held the line with such tenacity that his injuries were catastrophic. He was left nearly dead, kept alive only by the miracles of Adeptus Mechanicus biotech. Yet from this trauma, he emerged stronger, becoming one of the first to adopt the Primaris transformation. He has since commanded the Ultramarines across the galaxy, balancing respect for tradition with the brutal need for evolution. Then there is Dante, the golden death mask of a dying age. Old beyond comprehension, he has led the Blood Angels for over a millennium. His face, though hidden behind his iconic mask, is a map of sorrow and resilience. Every scar he bears is for a brother lost. Every campaign he leads is with the knowledge that he may fall to the Black Rage at any moment. And yet, he has never succumbed. Through will alone, Dante remains himself, still a commander, still a leader, still a symbol. During the devastation of Baal, it was Dante who coordinated the defense. With countless successor chapters at his command, and Leviathan descending in numbers that defied strategy, he did not falter. He made the impossible decision to unleash the Death Company in its entirety, to gamble everything on a defense that could only end in blood. And still, he held. Even when the skies turned black with wings and the sands of Baal drank oceans of ichor, Dante stood. When Guilliman arrived, it was not to a corpse, but to a chapter master still breathing, still commanding, still enduring. Their leadership styles could not be more different. Calgar is methodical, cool, a master of war tables and predictive models. Dante is instinctual, passionate, and often trusts his gut more than a scanner. Calgar builds the future with brick and bone. Dante protects the past with blade and flame, and yet both have earned their place in legend. Not through arrogance, but through sacrifice. Dante in particular has carried the weight of knowing he may never see peace. He has asked the Emperor for death, not out of weakness, but because he fears what will happen when his strength finally fails. And still, the Emperor denies him, because the Imperium still needs him, because no one else can bear the sorrow he does without breaking. Calgar too bears a quiet burden. In the wake of Guilliman's return, many thought he would be cast aside, but instead, Guilliman honored him, trusted him, gave him the reins to Ultramarine operations even as he took on galactic leadership. That trust has only deepened Calgar's resolve. He knows he is not a Primarch, but he leads with the knowledge that every victory, every moment of order in a collapsing galaxy is a legacy not just to his chapter, but to his world. These two men are not just successors. They are proof that greatness does not end with the Primarchs, that even in the long shadow of godlike figures, mortal warriors can rise. That strength is not only measured in power, but in how long one can endure without losing oneself. Calgar and Dante are sons of giants, but they are giants in their own right. The very blood that flows through the veins of a space marine is sacred. It is not merely genetic, it is the divine echo of a Primarch's legacy, the crucible through which humanity transcends itself. And when it comes to the Blood Angels and the Ultramarines, The nature of that blood could not be more different. One is a song of madness and divinity, the other a template of perfection and resilience. Their gene seed tells a story, not only of power, but of how each chapter confronts its fate. The gene seed of the Ultramarines is widely regarded as the most stable among all the first founding legions. It replicates cleanly, mutates rarely, and produces space marines of consistent physical and psychological health. This purity has made the Ultramarines the backbone of the Adeptus Astartes. Over half of the known successor chapters in existence descend from their line. Their gene seed is so reliable that the Administratum and the Adeptus Mechanicus treat it as the default for Astartes production, an industrialized miracle in a decaying galaxy. This stability is not simply a matter of pride. It enables the Ultramarines to maintain a structured recruitment system, to train neophytes with precision, and to deploy forces without fear of internal collapse. Their soldiers are uniformly competent, their psych evaluations near flawless. While other chapters battle internal deviance or biological degeneration, the Ultramarines operate like a well-oiled machine. Every warrior is a perfected cog in a grand design. And in a galaxy where chaos mutates everything it touches, that kind of biological resilience is a rare and potent weapon. In contrast, the gene seed of the Blood Angels is one of the most unstable and tragic. The Red Thirst, a genetic mutation that drives its host to bloodlust, is present in all their battle brothers. It is an unquenchable craving for flesh and violence, a reminder that the blood of Sanguinius did not survive untainted. And then there is the Black Rage, a psychic curse that transforms a warrior into a howling avatar of death, trapped in the final moments of the Primarchs' murder. These flaws are not rare, they are guaranteed. Every Blood Angel lives with the knowledge that he will eventually succumb to one or both. It is not a question of if, but when. This curse has devastating implications. Blood Angel successors, like the Flesh Tearers, are even more unstable, some bordering on uncontrollable. Recruitment is more selective, not because the Blood Angels seek excellence, but because only the strongest minds can withstand the constant battle for control. Each new Marine is a gamble, a bet against madness, a hope that this one, perhaps, will hold out longer than the last. And yet, from this cursed gene seed emerges beauty. Blood Angels are not simply madmen, they are among the most gifted warriors and artists in the Imperium. Their enhanced senses, especially vision and reflex, are superior even by Astartes standards. Their preternatural grace in close combat is legendary. Some whisper that the flaw is tied to a deeper spiritual truth, that in their madness lies a connection to something divine, or at least something profoundly human. The Blood Angels' curse also unites them. They do not pity the afflicted, they venerate them. Death Company warriors, racked by the Black Rage, are honored beyond measure. Their doomed charge into battle is not a symptom of failure, it is a ritual of redemption. And while the Ultramarines bond through discipline and doctrine, the Blood Angels find their brotherhood in shared suffering. It is an intimacy forged in fire, a kinship that transcends words. There is also a subtle irony. The Ultramarines' gene seed, while perfect, can be a prison. Their recruits must conform to a precise standard. Innovation is monitored. Emotion is regulated. They must remain ideal Astartes at all times. There is little room for eccentricity, for deviation, for individuality. Meanwhile, the Blood Angels, in their imperfection, embrace a vast spectrum of identity. Their curse gives rise to artists, madmen, visionaries, and heroes, each defined not by compliance, but by struggle. In this way, the purity of blue and the corruption of red each bear their own cost. The Ultramarines maintain legacy through control. The Blood Angels preserve meaning through pain. Both gene seeds are powerful, but they create entirely different kinds of warriors. One engineered for empire, the other sculpted by tragedy. And in the end, neither is superior. One survives, the other inspires. Both bleed in their own way. If ever there was a moment that could define a chapter's soul, it was the defense of their home. For the Blood Angels, it was the siege of Baal, a cataclysm so vast, so terrible, that it nearly erased them from existence. For the Ultramarines, it was the defense of Macragge, a brutal, unrelenting stand against Highfleet behemoth that tested the very marrow of their discipline. These battles were not merely wars of survival. They were crucibles of identity. They revealed, In fire and death, exactly what each chapter was made of. The Siege of Baal was not a battle, it was an extinction-level event. Hive Fleet Leviathan, the most ravenous tendril of the Tyranid menace, descended upon the Baal system with the intent to devour it whole. Every planet, every moon, every orbital structure, consumed. Dante, ancient and weary, stood as the last light of his chapter. He summoned all Blood Angel successors to his side, calling forth every scrap of strength they had. It was a final stand in the truest sense. There was no retreat, no reinforcements in sight, only the certainty of annihilation. And yet, they fought. From the upper atmosphere to the burning sands of Baal Prime, the sons of Sanguinius made the Tyranids bleed. Dante led from the front, even as his body began to falter. The Death Company was unleashed in its entirety, a tide of black-armored rage that tore through the alien swarm with suicidal fury. Every hill became a grave. Every crater, a tomb. The skies darkened with spores, the earth cracked with detonations, and still the Blood Angels did not yield. What makes the Siege of Baal legendary is not that they won, it's that they refused to die. Even as Baal was falling, even as the Tyranids breached their inner sanctums, they bought every inch of survival with heroism so profound it echoed across the stars. And when the Great Rift tore open the galaxy and the Indomitus Crusade arrived, led by none other than Robout Guilliman, the Blood Angels still stood, not unbroken, but undefeated. Macrage's defense came decades earlier but burned with the same desperate intensity. Hive Fleet Behemoth crashed upon the realm of Ultramar like a tidal wave of flesh and fangs. The First Company, veterans, heroes, the unshakable core of the Ultramarines, was deployed to the polar fortresses. There, they faced the Tyranid swarm without hope of relief. For days, they held, sealing doors with their bodies, turning every corridor into a killing field. It was a massacre. They did not break ranks, not once, even as they were overwhelmed. Their sacrifice bought time, enough for Calgar to rally the rest of the chapter and obliterate the Hive Fleet with the combined might of orbital defenses and precision counterattacks. The cost was immense. Hundreds of Ultramarines lay dead. The fortress was drenched in ichor and blood. But the line held. Macrage was not consumed, and the legend of the First Company became etched into the heart of every successor chapter. Where the Siege of Baal was a storm of fury and sorrow, Macrage was a lesson in endurance and sacrifice. The Blood Angels faced the end of their kind, and by sheer spiritual fire denied it. The Ultramarines faced overwhelming odds, and used doctrine, unity, and sacrifice to survive. Both battles shaped their legacies, not just to the Imperium, but to each other. In the aftermath, Baal became hallowed ground, a shrine not only to survival, but to the kind of beauty that can only exist in tragedy. Macrage, ever orderly, rebuilt its fortresses and honored its dead with solemn precision. One wears its wounds like sacred stigmata, the other seals its pain beneath marble and steel. These battles are more than victories. They are mirrors into the hearts of each chapter. They show us what happens when the gods are cornered, when hope dies and only identity remains. The Blood Angels screamed into the abyss and painted it with glory. The Ultramarines held the line with bloodless hands clenched into iron fists. Neither approach is wrong. Both are terrifying, both are beautiful, and both are absolutely necessary in a galaxy that never stops trying to consume what little light remains. In the brotherhoods of the Adeptus Astartes, kinship is forged not by blood, but by battle. Yet within the Ultramarines and the Blood Angels, that bond takes on vastly different forms, reflections of the psychic scars and spiritual paths their warriors tread. One chapter binds its sons through codified unity and unshakable duty. The other, through shared madness, visions of death, and the love of a Primarch lost to martyrdom. But both, in their own ways, create warriors whose ties are deeper than loyalty. They are survival. For the Blood Angels, the bonds between brothers are not merely tactical, they are existential. Every single one of them lives under the shadow of the red thirst and the black rage. Each day is a struggle not to fall into madness, to keep the memory of Sanguinius from overtaking the present. And so they do not just fight together, they suffer together. This shared agony is more than a curse, it is a sacred communion. From the moment a neophyte tastes the blood in the chalice, he becomes part of a lineage that spans not just centuries, but tragedies. He is taught to revere his brothers not simply as comrades, but as fellow torchbearers in an unending night. The most intense expression of this bond is found in the Sanguinary Guard. Clad in golden armor, these warriors are more than elite bodyguards. They are living relics, the bearers of the Primarchs' memory. Their closeness to Sanguinius, both spiritually and symbolically, elevates them to a status beyond even their rank. But even among regular squads, there is an intimacy that borders on the transcendent. Battle cries become hymns, victories are mourned as much as celebrated, and when one of their own falls to the Black Rage, there is no mockery, no fear, only reverence and sorrow. They fight beside him until the end, honoring the fury that has consumed him as a final, glorious act. The Ultramarines, by contrast, foster a brotherhood through structure. Every squad, every company is built with purpose. Recruits are raised within a system that instills unity as a foundational truth. The Codex Astartes does not just dictate tactics, it creates psychological cohesion. Every Marine knows his role. Every rank is earned through merit. And while this may seem sterile from the outside, within the chapter, it produces an unshakable trust. When an Ultramarine calls for support, he knows it will come. Not because of love, but because the system works. This trust, this order, creates a different kind of emotional bond. Less dramatic, perhaps, but no less powerful. The Ultramarines do not weep in their rituals. They do not name their squads after angels or ancestors, but they drill together, live together, and fight as a singular entity. They do not need to share trauma to be close. They share purpose. And in the darkest battles, when chaos threatens to consume all, that purpose becomes a lighthouse. Yet even among the Ultramarines, moments of deeper connection emerge. Veterans who've stood through multiple crusades together develop a camaraderie that rivals any Blood Angel's brotherhood. Calgar's relationship with his honor guard, Gilliman's mourning for his fallen captains, these are not the cold gestures of a machine. They are the quiet pain of those who carry the weight of thousands of lost names. What truly differentiates the two is how they process loss. The Blood Angels build catacombs. They carve statues. They sing laments for brothers consumed by the rage. Their grief is theatrical, holy, beautiful. The Ultramarines, meanwhile, etch names into marble walls and move forward with precision. Their grief is structured, contained, dignified. And yet both forms are real. Both express a love that the Imperium cannot afford to acknowledge openly. In truth, the nature of their brotherhoods is defined by their greatest fear. The Blood Angels fear being forgotten. The Ultramarines fear losing control. And so one holds tighter with emotion, the other with doctrine. One embraces the chaos within, the other builds walls against it. But when they fight, when the bolters roar and the heavens split open, both chapters become unified in a way no outsider can understand. Whether through code or curse, whether by hymnal or protocol, their bonds are unbreakable. Because in the end, they are not just soldiers. They are brothers, they are angels of death, and they will not let each other fall alone. In the Imperium, where gods walk in armor and madness howls from the stars, no warrior remains untouched by the warp. But how they confront it reveals the very soul of a chapter. The Blood Angels and the Ultramarines approach this existential threat with opposing philosophies. One embracing visions and despair as sacred burdens, the other defying them with cold logic and faithless resilience. In their responses to the Imperium, we see two roads diverging beneath a dying sun. One paved with fire and sacrifice, the other with discipline and refusal. The Blood Angels' relationship with the warp is intimate, painful, and unending. They do not merely fight the horrors spawned from it. They live with its echoes in their minds. The Black Rage is not a simple mutation. It is a psychic event, an inherited trauma burned so deeply into their genetic memory that it manifests again and again. When a brother falls to the rage, he does not lose control randomly. He is transported. Mentally and spiritually, he is there. In the final moments of Sanguinius's death, he feels Horus's fist crushing his bones. He sees the betrayal. He hears the Emperor's silence. This is not metaphor. It is experience. Real, relived, revered. The chaplains of the Blood Angels do not merely offer prayers. They perform psychic triage. The death company is not an anomaly to be purged. It is a sacrament. When they paint their armor black, when they charge headlong into battle without hope of return, they are not just dying, they are communing. In their madness, they become closer to Sanguinius than any sane brother could ever be. This is a kind of faith that no codex can contain. It is emotional, raw, horrifying, and divine. Visions, too, plague many within the chapter. Some blood angels receive dreams of golden wings, of thrones cracked in sorrow, of galaxies bathed in red. These are not always pathological. Some are prophetic. Whether they come from the warp or from within, none can say. But they shape the chapter profoundly. There are librarians among the blood angels, whose powers bloom not from calculation, but from overwhelming emotion. They do not command the warp like a tool. They endure it like a storm, channeling sorrow and rage into psychic flame. The Ultramarines, by contrast, treat the warp with methodical suspicion. They are not faithless. They revere the Emperor as a guiding figure. But their belief is tempered by pragmatism. They do not see visions. They do not sing laments. They act. When dealing with the warp, they call upon their librarians with strict codes and mental fortresses built through discipline. Their psychers are among the most well-trained and rigorously evaluated in the Adeptus Astartes. The Ultramarines do not embrace the unknown. They confine it, analyze it, and weaponize it only with the utmost care. Chaos for them is not a spiritual fall. It is a flaw in logic, a crack in order, and their entire structure exists to prevent such cracks. The Ultramarines reject superstition where possible. They do not offer grand rituals to appease unseen forces. They perform strategic rites meant to maintain cohesion. The warp is an enemy like any other, terrifying, yes, but not invincible. Their defense lies in unity, in doctrine, in the shield wall of the mind, and yet, even in their cold defiance, the warp still touches them. There are Ultramarines who have glimpsed horrors that cannot be described. There are chaplains who wrestle with visions they will never confess. But these are buried, silenced, locked behind walls of reason. Because to give those visions voice would be to admit that something cannot be explained, and that is a threat far worse than any demon. Where the blood angels find identity in madness, the Ultramarines find it in resistance. Where one sings to the warp, the other builds a fortress against it. But neither escapes, neither is free, because in the grimdark galaxy, the warp is not just a power, it is the mirror of the soul. And in that mirror, the blood angels see tragedy. The Ultramarines see discipline, but both see themselves. And both must ask the same question, over and over, with every battle, every sacrifice, every brother lost to shadow. How long can a warrior stare into that mirror before something else looks back? The Imperium is dying. That is not speculation. It is an observable truth. Systems collapse, stars go dark, and entire sectors vanish into the jaws of the warp. In such an age, strength must be measured not only in battle prowess, but in value, in what a chapter represents, what it brings to the table when hope fades and faith cracks. So when we ask, who does the Imperium need most? The Ultramarines or the Blood Angels, we are not simply comparing warriors, we are weighing the soul of the Imperium itself. The Ultramarines offer what the Imperium lacks most: stability, structure, continuity. In a galaxy of madness, they are a foundation. Their realm, Ultramar, is not a war zone. It is a functioning society. Agriculture, law, culture, trade, education. These are not mere luxuries, they are the tools of survival. The Ultramarines do not just protect humanity, they allow it to exist in a form that resembles civilization. And in doing so, they remind us that the Emperor once dreamed of an empire, not just a prison. Guilliman, in his return, has only magnified this role. As Lord Commander, he now steers the ship of humanity through tides of horror that would drown any lesser being. He has not just saved sectors, he has rewritten military doctrines, streamlined logistics, and brought a semblance of order back to the broken corpse of the Imperium. The Ultramarines are his chosen arm. They are the enforcers of his new Imperium, not through tyranny, but through excellence. They are dependable, scalable, and efficient. In this sense, the Imperium needs them not only to survive battles, but to survive as a concept. But then there are the Blood Angels, and they offer something the Ultramarines cannot. Something no calculation, no doctrine, no codex can ever replicate. They offer meaning. Where the Ultramarines give humanity structure, the Blood Angels give it heart. They are icons of sacrifice, of beauty, of loss. Their very existence is a sermon in steel, that to be human is to suffer, to transcend. They do not lead fleets or govern sectors. But when a blood angel lands on a dying world, the people weep not because they are saved, but because they are seen. Because someone still remembers that they are worth saving. In the darkest reaches of the Imperium Nihilus, where the light of the Astronomicon does not reach, rumors of golden angels bring hope. The blood angels, despite their dwindling numbers and genetic curse, do not retreat. They throw themselves into the worst conflicts not because they are ordered to, but because they believe. And that belief is infectious. It rallies dying regiments. It reignites failing defenses. Their presence turns routes into martyrdoms. And martyrdoms, in this cruel galaxy, are the seeds of resistance. Dante, too, has become more than a commander. He is a symbol, a living relic. Where Guilliman builds empires, Dante lights candles in the dark. And in a universe where chaos feeds on despair, that flicker of light is not just comfort, it is weaponry. So who does the Imperium need most? If we speak of logistics, territory, and continuity, the answer is clear: the Ultramarines. They are the architects of survival. They make the Imperium function. Without them, the entire edifice collapses under its own weight. But if we speak of soul, of inspiration, of the fire that keeps a man standing when all else is lost, then the Blood Angels are irreplaceable. They are not meant to rule. They are meant to remind us why we fight. And perhaps that is the point. The Imperium does not need one or the other. It needs both. Not equally, not always at the same time, but desperately. It needs the mind of Guilliman and the heart of Sanguinius. It needs the walls of Macragge and the songs of Baal. Because without structure, humanity falls to entropy. And without beauty, it forgets why it bothers to survive at all. In the cold calculus of war, it would be easy to pit Ultramarines against Blood Angels and demand a victor. One chapter of order, one of passion. One a living codex, the other a requiem of rage. But such comparisons, while tempting, miss the point. The truth, the painful, glorious truth, is that the Imperium's soul is fractured, and these two chapters represent its halves. The Ultramarines are what the Imperium wishes it could be: rational, unified, eternal. They build strongholds that last millennia, craft strategies that span systems, and lead with an unwavering commitment to law and structure. Their nobility is earned through clarity. Guilliman's dream lives through them, and in the dark tides of the galaxy, that dream is a fortress in itself. But the Blood Angels are what the Imperium actually is: wounded, furious, and tragically beautiful. Their battles are not waged for conquest, but for meaning. Every brother is a candle against the void, burning too brightly, too briefly, but illuminating the darkness in a way that Doctrine never could. Their curse is not their weakness, it is their honesty. They do not pretend to be unbroken. They fight precisely because they are. We look at Dante and see an angel with a cracked halo, still standing after 1,000 years, weeping in secret for every son lost to the rage. We look at Calgar and see a man who built a citadel of logic in a universe that constantly tries to burn it down. One fights with fire in his veins, the other with ice in his soul. Both are titans, both are necessary. To compare them is to misunderstand them. They are not competitors, they are counterweights. Without the Ultramarines, the Imperium would spiral into anarchy. Without the Blood Angels, it would turn into stone. One gives it purpose, the other, poetry. Together they hold back the night, and so the question, who is the strongest, becomes meaningless. Because strength is not just measured in numbers, victories, or purity. It is measured in the weight one can carry, in the flames one can endure, in the stories told long after the bolter falls silent. The Ultramarines will be remembered as the foundation, the Blood Angels as the fire in the cathedral, both eternal, both tragic, both beautiful. If you've walked with me this far, if you felt the cold wind of Macragge and the searing heat of Baal, if you've seen the gold and the blue clash against eternity, then you know why we can't choose. Because to love one is to admire the other, and to understand both is to understand the Imperium itself. If you felt something in these stories, if the angel and the king stirred something in your soul, then join us. Subscribe, because there are more legends to tell, more rivalries to explore, and more truths to uncover in the ashes of mankind's last great dream. The war never ends, but neither does the story.